Good afternoon. Hello. Hey, on YouTube and on Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok. I'm Brian Manning and I'm an asylum lawyer. My law firm is called Political Asylum Lawyers, and we help immigrants all over the United States, all over, doesn't matter where you live, all over the country, to secure their future in America through asylum. That's what we do all day, every day is asylum. I don't call myself an immigration lawyer. Immigration lawyers are lawyers who do like all kinds of immigration. We don't do all kinds of immigration. We do asylum. That's what we do all day, every day. Asylum. We're asylum lawyers. I'm going to answer your questions today about asylum in the United States. So let me know in the comments. First of all, say hello. I want to hear where you're watching from. Hello on TikTok. We got Excellent47, Superstar2603. What's up on YouTube? Ahmed says hello. We got Badru saying hello, hi from Massachusetts. We got Marcel. We got Jabron. Hello. Thank you for being with us. Let me know where you're watching from. Say hi and let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And then let me know what questions you have. I'm ready to answer your questions about asylum in America. Before we get to that, though, I want to say this. There's two words that you should never use in your asylum interview. You should not use these words in your asylum interview or in your declaration or really anything. What do you think those words are? Let's have a contest. What two words do you think? They're two separate words. It's not a two-word phrase. It's two completely separate words. Let me know what you think they are. Two words that you should never say during your asylum interview, whether that's in your asylum interview with USCIS or in immigration court. Let me know, and I'm going to tell you what they are in 1 second. Francis says hi from Texas. Nice. We got Muthanene, sorry for mispronunciation, is in North Carolina. Welcome. We got Huds, who says, hello, Brian, watching from Seattle. Very nice. Seattle is beautiful. Jabron says, from Oklahoma, says, I spoke to Natalia, and soon we'll be making an agreement for my court proceedings with you. All right. That's good news. I'm glad to hear that, Jabron. Sounds like you had a good call with Natalia. Natalia is great. She's one of our asylum professionals. She's one of the people that does our consultations, that talks with you when you call in. It helps us understand your situation, helps us understand, your goals, what you're trying to achieve, what the problem is we need to solve, but what your longer term immigration goals are. And we're going to tell you in that consultation, just like Natalia did with Jabron, we're going to tell you whether we think we're in a position to help you. And if so, we're going to explain how. We're going to explain what those steps are. Jabron, I trust Natalia did a great job with that because she does a great job. She's a professional. She's a real pro. And I'm glad to hear that you said that you'll be making an agreement soon with us. I'm pumped to hear that, Jabron. Thank you. I really look forward. I'm glad we're going to have a chance to support you in your asylum journey. So thank you, okay? So anybody guess what those two words are that you can't say, that you should not say in your asylum interview? All right. Nice. Adam says, we are proud of you. That's a nice thing to say. Thank you. Superstars 2603 in Texas. All right. So what are the two words that you should not say in your asylum interview? The two words you should not say are persecution and torture. What do I mean by that? Well, listen, you probably heard that to win asylum, you got to show that you're at risk of being persecuted. That is so annoying. Those of you on, how do I turn that off? You guys on YouTube and Facebook, you see those fireworks when I did some kind of hand movement. How do I turn that off? I'm on Mac. Anyway. To win asylum, you got to show that you have a well-founded fear of being persecuted, okay? Persecution, in the way that it's used in our asylum laws, is what we call a term of art. What does that mean? Well, it means that it has a very specific meaning in the asylum context. Now, it has a specific meaning, but it's not defined concretely. In other words, you got to show that you're at risk of being persecuted, but what it means to be persecuted is not super clear. It's not super black and white, like, oh, being punched in the face 3 times would not count as persecution because it's not bad enough. But, being hit in the face with a baseball bat 3 times, that would be persecution. because that's bad enough. It's not that clear, but persecution basically means very severe harm, very severe harm. And the thing is, it is the job of the asylum officer or the immigration judge to try to determine whether the harm that you have suffered in the past and the harm that you fear you could suffer in the future, whether that harm is sufficiently severe, sufficiently bad to rise to the level of persecution. In other words, the asylum officer or judge is like, listen, it's my job to decide whether what happened to you is persecution. So when you come at me with your personal statement and in your, in your interview, you're telling me, oh, I was persecuted, I was persecuted, I was persecuted. The asylum officer is thinking, that's not your job to tell me you're persecuted. I will decide whether you are persecuted under the law in the way that that term persecuted is understood in the U.S. asylum context. Your job, asylum applicant, is to tell me what happened. To say that you were persecuted is to draw a conclusion. That's to try to say, oh, I was harmed in such a severe way that that harm constitutes or counts as persecution. But that's not your job, asylum applicant. That's the officer's job to make that determination. So listen, basically the asylum officer is like, you're trying to do my job using these technical terms that we use in this field. Don't do that, asylum applicant. Don't do that. Instead of telling me you were persecuted, just tell me what happened. Explain to me, describe to me the exact things that happened that harmed you. Describe for me the incidents of harm and like what actually happened to harm your body. Tell me about those things. Also, tell me about any threats or other psychological harm that you endured. But don't jump to the conclusion that, oh, that harm is persecution. Rather, just tell the officer what happened. Now, the same goes for torture. So torture in the asylum context is like a standard or a form of harm that is even worse than persecution. Torture basically means even harm that is even more severe than persecution. It's gravely severe harm, super, super severe harm, okay? And so if you say, oh, they took me and they tortured me, it's really meaningless to the asylum officer or to the judge. They're thinking, you're trying to use a word that is very technical. Don't try and use technical words. Just tell me what they did to your body, and I will decide whether that counts as torture, okay? So the bottom line is, in your declaration or your personal statement that you write for your case, and in your testimony, what you say on the day of your asylum interview or your court hearing, avoid the words persecution. Don't say they persecuted me or they will persecute me. Instead, say what they did. Explain in detail what they actually did or what you fear they will do in the future. Same with torture. Don't say they tortured me or they will torture me. Say the thing that you fear they will do to you. So instead of saying, oh, they're going to torture me, you describe what you think they will actually do to you. Maybe because, they've told you, they've threatened you with it, or maybe because they've done it to other people that are similarly situated to you. And I don't want to get too graphic on these lives, but we're talking about sensitive subjects, right? So instead of saying, I fear they will torture me, you want to say specifically what it is. Like, I fear they will pull my fingernails out, or I fear they will, sexually batter me. Whatever it is that you fear they will do, say that thing instead of saying torture or instead of saying persecute. Got it? Good. Let's go now to your questions. I'm going to start over on TikTok. Okay. Hello. Nice. Thanks, Adam, for saying we are proud of you. That's very kind of you. Okay. Chandra wants to know, what's the reason we can't find some I-94s online? Who knows? It's because it's the government and lots of those systems are just terrible. Or they may have, I don't know. It's just, there's no good rhyme or reason for it. It doesn't mean anything good or bad for your case, the fact that you can't find it online, okay? So Alexis says, what about being threatened? Thanks, Alexis, on TikTok for this question about being threatened. So, the question is this: what about being threatened. Can threats count as persecution such that you could, win your asylum case, even if you're not harmed, but rather you're just threatened? So here's the thing. Persecution is a high standard. You usually, in most cases, or let me rephrase that, most cases that win asylum are cases where the person has been physically harmed pretty severely to get to that persecution threshold. However, threats can, in some cases, count as persecution. That's especially true if they cause severe mental anguish and harm. Like if you get threatened and that causes you to have severe mental distress, that can help to establish persecution. And it helps if the person is in a position when making that threat to actually harm you. Like if someone puts a gun in your mouth and does a mock execution, yes, that by itself could be harm sufficiently severe to rise to the level of persecution. Okay? But even if the asylum officer decides, there were some threats, but like the threat of imminent death or imminent grave harm wasn't really, the threat wasn't that imminent, which is to say maybe, you got a call on the phone. They're like, we're going to get you. We're going to kill you. That just like a phone call threat that says we're going to kill you would almost certainly not be enough to count as persecution in the past. But it does help you to win your case looking forward when you're looking at the issue of well-founded fear of, do you have a well-founded fear of persecution, of future harm, future persecution? So, those threats are relevant, right? But also remember, threats can be combined with other things to cumulatively, like when you add them all up together, get you to that persecution threshold. So let's say you get, beaten up and you get punched in the face a few times, and it's not that bad, but you also get threatened a bunch. Like you get, threatening notes left at your house, threatening phone calls, and you're being harassed with like threats. All of that together, considered cumulatively, might count as persecution. All right. All right. Muthaneni says, my case in immigration court is on the 22nd of October. Good luck. Do you have a lawyer? I hope you do. It's not too late, but it's almost too late to really get a lawyer to be able to help you in a meaningful way. If we haven't talked yet, Muthaneni, you should call us. You're in Louisville, Kentucky. We have plenty of folks we have clients in Kentucky. We could definitely help you there. We help people all over the country, by the way. By the way, if you want to talk with one of our asylum professionals to see if we might be able to help you, then go to winasylum.com, WINASYLUM.com. That's winasylum.com. That's where you can schedule a consultation, what we call an asylum strategy session. Okay, an asylum strategy session with one of our asylum professionals. So a friend of mine filed mandamus after 1 week. He received an email from the Attorney General that the USCIS is processing his schedule. He wants to know how long this could take. So the question is, what happens after you sue the government in a mandamus lawsuit to force USCIS to give you your interview? What happens? What's the timeline? So listen, once the lawsuit is filed, the lawyers for the government have 60 days to respond and tell the judge what the government's position is on this lawsuit. Very often during that time is when they call me and say, Brian, you know what? We don't really want to fight this one. So if your client will just agree to drop this lawsuit and make it go away, then we'll give them their interview and their decision soon. And we sort of say, well, we'll put a pause on the case. We're not going to dismiss it yet. We don't dismiss until we get that decision in our hands. We want to keep that pressure on them. So usually within those 60 days is when they do the interview notice that says interview scheduled. It's scheduled for 3 weeks from now or a month from now, whatever. So usually that's kind of the timeline. After we sue, the interview usually happens on average 2 to 3 months after we sue. That's probably the average that we've been seeing. And we've been doing this a whole lot in the last couple of years. That's the average, I would say. So, but HUDs, your friend who already got some kind of message from the assistant U.S. attorney saying, hey, USCIS is processing your case. I hope that message said that the interview is being scheduled. If not, then it sounds like maybe the government's going to fight back on that lawsuit. I hope they file this with a lawyer. Listen, there's some things that you can do without a lawyer. Filing for a work permit, you can do without a lawyer. Okay, a mandamus lawsuit, not so much. Not so. The mandamus lawsuit is in federal court, and it's kind of tricky. All right. So, this raises, this is a good question that we get all the time, which is, do you really need a lawyer to help you with your mandamus lawsuit? So we're talking here about the lawsuit you're filing to try to get the government to schedule your interview. If you've been waiting for multiple years for your asylum interview, you can sue, right? This mandamus lawsuit, it's called. Listen, some immigration actions are easy. Filing for a work permit, that's easy. You don't need a lawyer for that usually. But this is different. Mandamus is federal court. Most immigration lawyers don't do this. Why? It's complicated and it's outside of the norm. It's not something that immigration lawyers normally do. And when they hear, ooh, federal court, it sounds hard. It sounds complicated and tricky, because it is. It's more complicated than most immigration court stuff and most USCIS stuff, because it's federal court, which is kind of a big deal. Lots of tricky rules. So, yeah, I think you need a lawyer for a mandamus case, or else if you do it by yourself, good chance it'll end up getting dismissed and you won't achieve your objective of getting your interview. Okay. Let's go over and see what Menez Sekmart says. Hey, Brian, how long is mandamus in Los Angeles taking to get responded to? Also, how long is the interview wait after you've sued? I've read the interviews are now more than a year away. So what's the question? The question is this: what's the interview wait time after you get your interview scheduled through a mandamus lawsuit, specifically for the Los Angeles Asylum Office? So yeah, we have been seeing in those cases where we have sued to help our clients get their interview by forcing USCIS to schedule it through this lawsuit. The Los Angeles Asylum Office has been taking a bit longer between the government coming back to us and saying, okay, we don't want to fight the lawsuit, here's your interview, between getting that letter, that's the interview notice that says, here's your interview, and the actual interview date. Yeah, it's been longer than most other offices. I remember seeing it recently in some of our cases at like 6 months, and like one was like 8 months. We haven't seen it like a year, like you mentioned in the question. But yeah, 6 months, 8 months, which is a long time, and it's not ideal, but it's better than not suing. Because if you don't sue, you're probably going to be waiting multiple years. So it's still better than not suing. Okay. Other offices, most other offices, we've been seeing it much faster. Like I would say on average, probably our clients are getting the interviews probably like 3 months on average after we sue the government. Okay. In other asylum offices. Laura says, I'm an attorney at ICH, not-for-profit. We follow you. Great content. Great content. Thank you so much, Laura. Very kind of you. What is ICH? What does that stand for? Where are you guys at? Curious to hear. Let me know, Laura. Thank you for taking the time to comment. Very kind of you. I appreciate it. Stone Edge says, can I be deported while my asylum case is still pending in immigration court? So the question is this: are you at risk of getting deported while your asylum case is still pending? Technically, yeah, but that risk is very low, all right? So listen, if you've got an asylum case pending with USCIS, with the Asylum Office, you're probably not going to get actually deported or even detained unless you go and break some law that makes the government think that you are a danger to people, okay, that you're dangerous. The policy of USCIS is not to put someone in deportation proceedings, which would have to happen first before you could actually get deported, while they have an application pending with USCIS. Now, for people that are in immigration court, it's actually the same. The policy is, well, if you're in immigration court, you're not going to get deported unless you actually get an order of deportation. And you're almost certainly not going to get detained unless you commit some crime or do something that makes the government think that you are a danger to other people. So, yeah, you don't have to really worry about it. Focus on fighting and trying to win your asylum case. All right. William says, Willie FRK says, hey, Brian, it's William here. I'm from Myanmar, Burma. I applied for my asylum last December in Los Angeles. I watched all your videos before I applied, and they were really helpful. So I especially liked your live videos, tutorials, and insight. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Willie. Willie, appreciate you. William, I appreciate you taking the time to comment. And tell us that. I'm glad it was helpful. Listen, for those of you on TikTok and on Facebook, if you want all of our best stuff, you need to go to YouTube. That's where I've got all the best stuff. Like I've got like very long, detailed trainings. Laura, I don't know if you've seen those, but your staff and the people that you serve might appreciate some of those. If you go to YouTube and you search for political asylum lawyers, and then you look at the playlists, there are some that say full-length trainings, full-length asylum trainings, and there's like very detailed trainings, tutorials. Some of them are like, there's the one on how to fill out the asylum application form is like 3 hours long. It's ridiculously long, but very detailed. So listen, the best thing you can do is hire a lawyer. The next best thing you can do is learn from our YouTube channel. Okay. In English, it's political asylum lawyers, but Laura and others, we have a YouTube channel in Spanish as well. It's called Asilo Aprobado. Again, it's Asilo Aprobado. All right. All right. Ahmed said, is it a fact that immigration lawyers aren't allowed to help their clients phrase their stories and add more details? Good question. That's a very good question, and it's an important one. So the question is this: what is the lawyer's role in helping their client, the asylum applicant, to develop their declaration or their personal statement? Can the lawyer tell them what to say? Can you make suggestions or hints? How does that work? So listen, it's a very different standard. In the immigration courts, the judges like it when the lawyer writes the declaration for the person, all right? It needs to be 100% true, and the information must have come from the client, from the applicant. But the judges prefer that the lawyer actually be the one to put it on paper because it will be better that way. The asylum office is different. They think it's like fraudulent when the lawyer helps hardly at all. So there's a big difference between those two places, court versus the asylum office. I mean, bottom line, yeah, the lawyer should be helping with things like making sure the case is explained clearly and that all the most important things are addressed. Okay, but how much to be involved beyond that? Yeah, that's a tricky thing. It's kind of a lawyer by lawyer thing. We are very involved. We pretty much write it from scratch. Well, for immigration court cases. For immigration court cases, actually, I'll just tell how we do it for both. For immigration court cases, for both of them, we have our clients write a draft declaration. All right, it is based off, or we ask them to watch a YouTube video that I have that's called "How to Write the Perfect Personal Statement" or something like that. It's like 30 minutes long. It's pretty detailed. It's like how to explain your story in writing. We asked them to watch that video and to write a 3-page statement along those lines. Then we take it and then we ask them a million questions about it, a bunch of questions in written format. We'll take a sentence they wrote and we'll be like, hey, what did you mean by that? Or what happened next? What did they say next? It's a bunch of questions that is basically like an asylum interview on paper. And they reply in written format to answer our questions. And if we have follow-up questions, we'll go back and forth and we'll do this exercise again. And this is how we get the information that we need to really understand the case in a deep way so we can understand it well, so we can make the strongest arguments possible, and so that we can prepare the client really well for their interview. But what happens next depends on whether we're dealing with immigration court or with USCIS. With immigration court, we take that draft document and those answers to our questions, and we start from scratch. We sit down, one of our lawyers sits down, and we start from scratch, and we write a new declaration based off of that information. It's got to be 100% true and accurate, but we restate it, and we include what we want, what we think is most important to include, and we leave out what we think is not important to include. And we start pretty much from scratch, but with that information that the client gave us to write a new declaration. The client has to, of course, review it and tell us that sign it only after they agree that everything is true and correct. But with the asylum office, it's different. We do not take that. We're not that involved. After the client answers our questions, we make a few recommended edits to their draft, just basically to try to make sure that it's clear, like what's trying to be communicated, and to make sure the most important stuff is included. But it's it's clear that it was written not by a lawyer, but rather by like the client. And we're less involved in shaping the final product, but we still do a lot of work with the client to get to the final product, but also just so that we can really understand the case well. Okay. So Ahmed, I mean, ultimately the answer to your question is no, it's not true that lawyers can't help their clients. All right. 23 Drone View says USCIS didn't approve and I'm now in immigration court in Newark. How is the Newark immigration court? It's pretty good. Pretty high approval rates. Not as high as New York, like in New York City, but Newark is pretty good. So you got a chance. All right. All right. Me first, please, says Marcel. He says, I'm still waiting for an asylum interview. Could I apply for a travel document? Is it possible? So the question is this. Can you get a travel document while you're waiting for your asylum interview with USCIS such that you can leave the United States and have confidence that you'll be allowed back in when you try to return? And the answer is, yeah, you can apply for that. There's a special form that you fill out, Form I-131 from USCIS, that is for people that want to get this travel document. And one of the bases for that is that you have a pending asylum case with USCIS. You send this in, there's a fee to pay. You do have to explain why you need to leave the country. And it takes a while for them to make a decision on it. Last I checked a few months ago, it was taking 18 months. So you're not going to get to travel anytime soon unless you ask for them to expedite this decision because of emergency circumstances that you need to travel urgently for. But you should not go for very long. I say not more than 2 weeks. All right. Definitely do not go back to the country from which you're claiming asylum, the country where you fear being persecuted. All right. Or that will undermine your case. All right. But yeah, some lawyers are like, oh, I don't think you should do it. It's pretty risky because you might not be allowed back in. I think the risks of problems like that are so low that I would do it if I were, in your shoes. If I were in the shoes of, if I were an asylum seeker and I felt like I really needed to travel, I wouldn't do it for vacation, but to go see loved ones you haven't seen in a long time, especially if they're ill or something, in a third country, not in your home country, but in another country, like a neighboring country. Yeah, I would do it. All right. So Velvet Versa says, while waiting for years for your asylum interview and new events happen, how should you include this in the declaration? So the question is this. What happens if you've been waiting for your asylum interview for multiple years and new stuff has happened while you've been waiting that's relevant to your case and you want the asylum officer to know about that? What should you do? Should you update your asylum declaration or just wait and tell the officer, at your interview? Well, listen, I think it's preferable to do an updated statement. And the question is, when do you do it? Do you do it when you think that the new things are done happening and send it in then, or do you wait until you get the interview notice and send it in then? I think I would probably wait until you get the interview notice that says your interview's been scheduled. Usually there's about 10 to 14 days between getting that letter and the day of the interview. I would send it in at that time. Right when you get the interview notice. All right. It's okay though if you don't do this. It's understandable that people just wait and talk about the new stuff at the interview without sending this letter, like an updated declaration in. That's okay as well. All right. Are we hiring any Chinese-speaking paralegals? No, not at this moment, but we're always hiring pretty much, so maybe eventually. So check those job boards or reach out to us if you want. Be Kind Always says, I'm from the UK and I'm terrified by the way it's going here and the way our government's acting. What chance do you think I have to come to the USA and apply for asylum, please? Thanks. There's other reasons I feel afraid to stay here too. Please answer if possible. So the question is, can you get asylum in the United States if you're from a country that's really developed and pretty democratic? Like, let's say a European country that a lot of people want to move to and has tons of immigrants moving there to seek asylum, like the United Kingdom. So if you're from the UK, can you come to the US and get asylum? Well, it's not impossible. And we have seen people get asylum from countries in Europe, including some of the most democratic and freest countries in the world, like in Scandinavia. It happens. It's very rare, though. It's very rare. It would have to be a very special circumstance for someone to get asylum who is from the UK to win asylum in the United States. So it's not impossible, but if you're in the United States and you fear being harmed in your country, then it's worth talking to an asylum lawyer, no matter what country you're from, because there might be a chance. So, yeah. But listen, we're only able to help people who are in the United States. So I would invite you to make a consultation with us, but we only do that for people that are actually in the United States right now. All right. All right. Abdul Minim says, I had an F1 visa and it got revoked. No idea why. Does it affect seeking asylum at the border? I'm not in the U.S. right now. So the question is this. What happens if you had a visa for the United States, but then that visa got revoked and now you want to come to the United States and seek asylum? Well, the fact that you had the visa revoked previously negatively affect your chances for getting asylum now. So we're talking about someone who might want to be coming to the U.S. southern border. If their visa was revoked, then they don't have the ability to travel to the United States like on an airplane, and instead really would have to only have the option of coming to the border. The answer is no. The fact that you had a visa revoked would not in and of itself negatively affect an asylum claim. There's no kind of admissibility or bars based on the fact that someone had a visa revoked. What is the conduct underlying it? In other words, why did they do it? Well, the thing that caused them to revoke the visa may be a negative factor or even a bar in your asylum case. So you should do a Freedom of Information Act request to find out why. Okay. Hope that helps. Nice. Oh, thanks for the gift on TikTok. Nice. Thanks for that. All right. Nice. So, okay. This is a good one. So, user 28221 says, if I sue the government, does it hurt my asylum case? Good question. We get this all the time. So the question is this: will suing the government to force them to give you your asylum interview actually undermine your underlying asylum case? Which is to say, listen, there's this thing called a mandamus lawsuit that I'm talking about all the time. And people always ask this question, okay? It's understandable, it's reasonable, it's a good question. Okay, well, could suing the government to force them to give you your interview actually make you look bad? Like when you go to have your asylum interview, might the asylum officer hold it against you or think it's a negative, bad thing that you sued the asylum office to get your interview and for that reason deny you? Again, it's reasonable, but no, I don't think so at all. There's 3 reasons. First, the officer might not even know. When I was an asylum officer, we didn't know that people had sued the government to get their interview. Second, even if they know, I don't think they're going to care. It's the United States. We sue all the time. It's not a big deal. Third, they can't use it against you. It's not a negative factor. It's not something they can point to as a negative factor and hold against you to deny you. Okay? So listen, we've been suing a ton in the last couple of years with great success. All right? Our clients are loving this because it works. It works really well. And I can tell you with full confidence, I do not worry at all about this hurting our clients' chances for winning their underlying asylum cases. I just have not seen that happening, and I don't expect to see it happening. I don't worry about that at all. All right? So that's that. All right. That's all for today. Got to run, but listen, it's always a pleasure to be here with you on the Asylum Answer Show. I'm Brian Manning. And my law firm is based in Texas, but listen, we help people all over the country. It doesn't matter where you are. We've got lots of clients in Texas where we're based, but we've got a bunch of clients as well in Florida, California, New York, around Chicago, North Carolina, and everywhere in between. So listen, if you want to see if we might be able to help you, then you should do this. Go to winasylum.com, 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 and you can schedule a consultation. Actually, right now, it's free. So listen, we used to charge almost $200 for this consultation, this Asylum strategy session. But right now, at least right now, it's free. So take advantage of that. You can call us. The numbers in my profile, or you can go to winasylum.com and schedule a consultation. Do it right now. Do it right now, like right now. All right. All right. That's it for today. Thank you. Bye, guys. Have a good evening. TikTok. See you later. YouTube. Pleasure as always.